All right, Dan. This is our bread and butter, man. An elk podcast. This thing was good.
Yeah, we definitely got a little bit specialized in a couple scenarios and overarching, of what is going through our minds in September. We are doing some prep right now too, but we mostly talked about what we're doing prep in the summer on the previous podcast with deer and antelope, and this one with elk. We definitely got in to the nitty gritty of behavior and stuff that, you'll see through it. It fires us up.
Yeah.
That's what
Oh,
it's
it's
all
just
about.
the best, man. Yeah, a lot of calling tactics in it, spot and stalk tactics, reading elk. Yeah, I think every elk hunter can have a takeaway from this podcast, and I know I
Yeah.
do just talking with you about it. But yeah, great podcast, man. We just want to thank a couple sponsors for today's show. We want to thank Matthews Bows. Got that new Lift X just absolutely shooting. That thing is so forgiving and tuned so easy with that limb shift technology. What a great bow those guys have produced.
Yeah, all of a sudden, changing arrows in the middle of summer is not really a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Fletch up a few arrows and shoot a couple bear shafts, and any fine tuning that you have to do with that limb shift, and your confidence is at an all-time high. So, yeah, it's hard to beat that.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have that new arrow vault as well. We've been trying that out so you can pack in there 6 arrows that you can take with you, keep all those fletching safe. Good for backcountry hunter, for the traveling bow hunter. But yeah, so impressed by that Matthews and what they're producing over there. Just great shooting bows. So thanks to those guys for their support.
Yep, good stuff.
Yep. Also want to thank Cutter Stabilizers. So Earl Stroll building the best stabilizers on the market. They're carbon fiber. They're small diameter. I find that they really cut the wind good too, just because there's less surface area there for the wind to blow. And then his weights are fairly small too. So you're not trying to shoot with a dinner plate off the front of your stabilizer, which is really nice.
That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah, just especially Western hunting.
Mm-hmm.
That sleek stabilizer that isn't going to be affected by the wind is huge. And I love the quick detach ability with it for traveling. I keep it pretty basic with a 10-incher out front, but it's quality components, and it's a small company. And when you have a small company, you have the best customer service. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and personal preference comes in. So you're shooting the 10. I've got a 15 and a 12. I've got a sidebar mount. He's also produced like a great quiver here lately. So just great products. And yeah, he started it out of his garage, but is testing on these products to make sure that they're going to hold up to the abuse us Western hunters put into his products. It's just bar none. Like, he wants to produce the absolute best products on the market, and everything I've put through his stabilizers, man, those things just hold up. Great Western stabilizers. So yeah, thanks a bunch to him for his support.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, as this comes out, let's see, this will probably be two down the road. We probably have some new Beyond the Grids that have hit.
Yeah. Check out Eastmans Hunting Journal YouTube channel, new Beyond the Grids, my elk hunt in Wyoming, your high country mule deer hunt, just the heart and soul of Western hunting, of what we do and what we talk about all the time on these podcasts or in these episodes coming up. So we're excited to launch these things. It's a fun time of year. Hype is high. We're all amped up. We're a couple months out here, 6 weeks out from antelope season. So, yeah, we're going to be at it before we know it. But, yeah, new season all summer, July and August, episodes dropping. I'll be on the watch for that. And, now's the time to prepare. Elk Collective, Deer Collective. We have our LOB code, so it's like 75% off for the collectives, which is, you won't find it any cheaper anywhere but here on the Life of a Bowhunter podcast. So that's a little treat for you guys. And, yeah, what else are we doing? Magazines.
Yeah, we've got the magazines. We've been writing in those and just getting geared up for season. We're stoked and get you guys out the absolute best recordings we can here, help make you guys successful or entertain you guys on your drive to the hunting spot. Hopefully you guys got some big adventures coming up. But, yeah, I know Dan and I are both so stoked for season here. It's all we've been talking about since I've got here. So I think we've done about 5 hours of podcasting, or at least it feels that way, but we've only recorded 2 episodes. But yeah, we're just it's a lifestyle, and we're definitely have the bow hunter's mindset right now. We're starting to get pretty fired up.
That's right. It never gets old.
Yep. Well, let's get into this episode,
Okay.
man. It's a great one.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, afternoon podcast. Most of the time we're sitting down in the morning, but this is a good one. It's a live podcast.
These are always funner anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
They're
like
the
live
best.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. So a great podcast this morning, and then wanted to carry with that same theme that we were talking about this morning, just like elk hunting in general and kind of elk hunting plans. As right now we're preparing all the logistics for our hunts, making sure that we have all our work taken care of, and then all these hunts really differ in the strategy that we're going to take to these different places. So what do you have? Do you have one elk tag, 2 elk tags this year? 3 elk tags. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, me and you both love to hunt elk. Like during September, there's no better place to be. So good on you. I've got 2 hunts, so 5 between us. That's a lot of elk hunting.
It's a lot of elk hunting. I really can only probably count on 2. I'm taking some buddies hunting this year in September as well. And some family members drew some tags for October. It's going to be a busy one for sure. But, I think, and that's kind of the beauty of Montana still, is I can hunt October.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helps. That really helps.
That helps me fit in my mule deer hunting early, and then my elk hunting. Yeah, I can really put my focus on in September in a different state. But I do want to hunt elk in Montana during September as well, as it is
Right.
good. But those weeks in October, I probably killed more bulls in October with my bow than I have September. I call it Rocktober. Like, it's really good, and all the hunting pressure wanes off, like nobody in the mountains. And, you can still find some rut action that's absolute fire. Like these elk, they seem to kind of like group up in October into these big groups with multiple bulls. They can be 10 or 15 bulls and a couple hundred cows, or even more sometimes. And then they're looking for like second cycle estrus cows coming in, or maybe the yearlings that are coming into estrus. And so those bulls, there's a lot of competition for the few cows that come into estrus. And so I found some absolute fire hunting in October. And then sometimes it can just be a little bit more chill, where it's almost like, I think of it as like rifle season, but with none of the pressure, and so it's kind of like glassing bulls on their feeding feature and trying to make moves, and I've killed bulls that way too.
Yeah, it's a great time to hunt elk. And it does seem a lot of areas, and maybe it's just area specific, but the rut's getting a little bit later, as the years go by. It seems like, I know down south too, especially, these archery tags in New Mexico and in Arizona, and of course New Mexico has the 2 seasons, and so you do get that 3rd week of September dates as well. But and Utah as well. I mean, really those archery seasons kind of wind down before the peak of the rut.
Mm-hmm.
And on the wrong year, you hear guys hunting early through the 3rd week of September, and it's tough. When you get a warm year, or whatever happens, and so that's why I do like October dates as well, especially for bow hunting, right? And in most of the West, most archery seasons, whether it's a controlled hunt or limited entry general season, is pretty much wound down for archery by September 30th. I mean, that's about it. And then there's either breaks or rifle seasons that start kicking in. And so I do like October in Montana for that reason, just because it's kind of a quieter time in the state to hunt. And unfortunately, we're going to lose some of that with the season restructure that they're talking about. And
are we? That's going to happen for elk too. I heard it was just mule deer, but they're going to...
Yeah, deer. Oh, maybe you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I think they're going to keep elk and
they're
leave
going to
that
keep
alone.
the elk the same.
Yep, they are.
But yeah, deer, they're going to put a week in August for archery season, and then a week in October for archery season, so we don't lose any days collectively.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, we still have our elk dates, which is nice. And there's a lot of the low country stuff that is still very, like you said, it's very good in October. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the high country stuff anywhere in the States, way up high, by October there's been snow, and the elk have just changed. They've moved, they've pushed down, or they've just pushed to secondary living, post-rut stuff, or maybe just rutting areas. But some areas the elk are very susceptible. Is that the right word? They're susceptible to weather and movement, like snow affects them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to say. Not
Yes.
necessarily susceptible, but some of this high country stuff, you get a snowstorm and it vacates of elk.
Mm-hmm.
Gone in Wyoming and Montana and some of the areas that I've hunted. But it's all different, and I don't really know why that some elk are a little bit more fragile to that, to the weather than others. It's weird.
What's really weird is that they go back up high during rifle season when the pressure, they don't stay low, but you're right. I think susceptible is the right word because they are really moved around by the weather during bow season because they don't have hunting pressure really to contend with in that late October. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. I know that feed starts to burn off up high too. So they start going lower for feed, but it seems like even sometimes a dusting of snow will move them out of that high stuff and they come down almost into winter range country or the faces or, but they are reachable in that country. And so you're right. In October dates, you usually get a bit of that weather, the rainstorms, the snowstorms, and it moves those elk around and also makes them really visual. I think they're trying to put on weight right after that rut, and they don't have like rifle guys after them or anything. So they tend to just come out into those parks and those meadows and like feed quite a bit as well in that October season. So, man, it is great dates in the hills. I mean, there's some guys hunting in October, but it really seems like it's vacated, the mountains. It seems like you have them all to yourself in there. And, yeah, I've chased some great bulls in October, and I kind of feel like that first week October is better than the second week to try to catch rut. But I say that, and then I've caught great hunting that second week, and I've caught them the last day of bow season rutting really hard, like usually around October 15th. So it kind of depends on what the weather does when they group up. But, yeah, October is great dates, and you just miss all that hunting pressure from the third week and fourth week of September. And I think a lot of times you have a better chance to kill a bull without guys chasing elk all over the place.
Yeah. I would say the downside is if you're a caller, I feel like later they've been spooked multiple times already.
That's true.
And so if you're relying on calling, I think that can be a little bit more difficult. Like
that's true.
Very educated by then, right?
Yep.
And I think that's well, I know I can speak for you, is where you flourish in spot and stalk elk hunting, especially in October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And even, ambush hunting can be really good that time of year. Like, I've seen elk come out or be feeding a feature in the morning, and then they're just you can almost pattern them a little bit. It's like, oh, they're feeding there and they put away up high. Pretty good bet they're going to come out and feed in that park again at night. And I've set up and have them come right into me and killed good 6-point bulls, like ambushing them that time of year too. So it doesn't always have to be making moves on them. Sometimes they're just a little bit more predictable. Yep.
No, absolutely. Especially after that weather. It seems like they focus a little bit more on feed and cover, and the spotlight of the rut is kind of waned by then. They're still rutting. Mm-hmm. By all means, they're still rutting. But, yeah, they do seem to be a little bit more predictable if you can find them in October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems like you got to find the big groups in October.
Yeah.
It's very rarely are you just seeing one bull or a group of cows and bulls. It seems like there's a lot of them when you find them in October. And even sometimes you just spot a bull and some cows and you think, oh, that's a group, and you go in there and then you figure out that there's elk everywhere in there. Yep. But I tend to find bigger groups in October when I'm into them.
And I feel like that's a sign of not only, there's hunting pressure, but they haven't been shot at yet with rifles, right? Mm-hmm. And so once those big groups get shot at a few times, that's when you see them like starting to break up. They get split up with all animal species, right? If you have a larger number group and, the guns start going off, there's confusion and they get broke up and split up and do their own things. And I think that's a sign of that too, that I like during rifle hunts when I'm guiding. And what I see is I keep that in mind is, areas that have big groups of elk probably haven't been shot at too much yet.
Yep.
So I keep that in mind too, pressure-wise.
Yep. And, we've talked about the seasons of hunting elk. When do you, if you had to pick, it's so tough. I'm like trying to force you into picking the date of peak rut. But the problem is the rut just ebbs and flows depending on where you're
Yeah.
hunting. I've been on one side of the range and they're rutting like crazy, and go to the other side of range and see elk, and there'll be bulls off feeding by themselves with cows, even in the 20th of September, the 17th of September. I went into this spot one time, and the rut fest was crazy, and there's like 300, 400 bugles a night, and I kind of played it patiently, like waiting for my chance. And the next day, the rut was like shut off. It was like they went crazy the day before, and then the very next day, it could have been 2 days later. I'm trying to remember years ago, but I remember seeing a giant 6-point bull just feeding off by himself in a park, not even interested in cows. And we're talking prime rut dates. But he had rutted the last 2 days or the last night. They had bred those cows. Those cows came out of estrus, and now he was just feeding, trying to get his health back up or his energy back up. But I really feel like that rut ebbs and flows, and even the start date can be tough to nail down. I mean, I've had it where I say, the 10th or the 11th of September, they're going crazy, and they go crazy from there on to the end of September, and it's awesome hunting. And then I've showed up on the 10th or 11th expecting that, and I don't hear a bugle until the 15th. Like, it didn't even get started until the 15th. And I know every area is different, but it just seems like that rut really ebbs and flows, and you just kind of got to be in elk country to see it. But every year it's different to me. Do you find that?
Yeah, this is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
These elk and the stages that they go from summer mode. And I just wrote an article about this for EHJ, for the Hunting Journal.
Oh, right on.
But I talked about some of the theories, like what you've brought up, and what I would consider like a pre-rut, peak, and then post-rut, and what these bulls are doing at these times. And I think it's so variant based on the age of the bull and how they manage the unit. What is the age class that they're managing for? And some of these states, like Utah, for example, when their management plan is written up and how it's shaped is around age class. And what do they want to see for harvest in a unit? And so this is very fascinating to me, because I believe that these older bulls, once they get like over 8, they've kind of past their prime. They're beyond the peak of their rutting days. And I think their testosterone drops. And I think all these things of quality of feed and when they shed their antlers, and then the type of feed that they're growing their antlers on through the summer, and just how they're wired as well, but how much testosterone is in that animal, right? And I think like these older bulls, and talking to some very veteran elk hunters that have hunted 30 plus years, and kind of what I've gathered is these older bulls, they know when to conserve their energy, and they know like what's worth fighting for and what's not. And I've seen this a couple times on some larger herds in the backcountry, where you'll have like these bulls that like they get into the rut, they want to rut, and they're September 5th and they're bugling and they're acting tough. They have high levels of testosterone, and they're probably not going to be the bulls that are doing the breeding. They'll probably get some breeding in, but you have these older age class bulls that are just bigger bodied. They've been around the block a time or two. They have bigger antlers, and they kind of hang in the periphery, and they're conserving. And then when it's go time, when they know that the majority of these cows are hitting estrus, they're sliding in and doing a bunch of breeding, and everybody kind of makes way. And a lot of times this is at night, and then they bounce off after a couple days and just recoup for a couple days. And so there's this dynamic that's going on with elk. This is my theory. This is what I believe from what I've gathered. And every unit can be different, but there's so much going on with, I think, when obviously you have to have cows that are going into estrus, right? If you don't have that, you're not going to have the action like what you're talking about. And I think if you have a couple cows going off with estrus for a couple days, the bulls smell that. If there's numbers of bulls in the area, there's going to be competition. There's going to be insane rutting activity. And when those cows get bred, things quiet down again. They can smell those pheromones in the air. And so this, once again, this is what it seems like is happening to me. But as far as like and I line this out in the article, once again, very personalized because this is my theory, but like all the way up to like September 20th is what you could consider pre-rut. And that might not be the case for your area, but seriously, you might not see peak rut until September 25th, September 30th in like Arizona or New Mexico in these, farther south units, just things hit a little bit later. And then I believe the peak of the rut can vary anywhere from September 20th to October 10th. That's my theory from what I've seen and kind of what I've gathered. And then, post-rut is anything after October 15th. And a lot of things can happen during that time too, based on where you're at. And I've seen when I was guiding in Montana in Paradise Valley on Dome Mountain, we saw a bull breed a cow November 11th. So probably third cycle. And so, there's a lot going on. And by that time, these mature bulls are gone, right? So this little raghorn bred this cow way late. And so I think it's just the testosterone load that these bulls have and how aggressive they are. They're all wired differently. And the best way I could compare it to was like, an MMA fighter. And you see these guys and you see how they're doing the press conferences and their weigh-ins. And, you get some guys that are smack talkers and, put it on a show for Dana. They want to really pump it up and act tough. And then you have the other guys that are kind of quiet and they're like, I'm just going to let my, the fight do the talking for me. And I think bulls are wired the same way. You get these cocky bulls that are all pumped up on testosterone, and you catch them early season when they're at the peak of that testosterone. They just rubbed, maybe they hit their first wall. They've been polishing their antlers and building those neck muscles, and they have these like just piping hot bugles, like they think they're the kings of all the land, and they're very easy to call in. And then you have other elk that don't do much talking. Like I've witnessed this. September 9th, this bull I killed in 2019, big old bull. He was 360, but just these heavy beams. And like, I watched this herd of like 100 plus elk and they were rutting. It was early. And one morning in the periphery, this bull like just kind of wanders in, just head low. And he just wanders in. He crossed a drainage up the other side. He's beelining towards this huge herd. Like he can smell them. He knows it's time. And later that night, he kind of staged. He got up into the last bit of timber that was available up there because the next basin, it was pretty open where the elk were, and he hung up for the day. And then I got up there that evening with the horses because I saw where he went in, and he was very cautious. But I did a lost calf call. I knew he was by himself. And he came sneaking in like a wolf, like head down, going through the timber. And he's like walking really quietly. And he's just looking. And this is an old bull. He was blind in the one eye. And he ended up, he was frontal at 35. And he saw where the call was coming from. And so he turned around and left because he kind of came in from the back door. But he still believed that there were elk behind me because he heard the horses. He heard the hooves and stuff. And so he bombed out of the cover and looped around in the wide open and was staring at my tan horse, and I shot him. But that's the type. This bull was old. His teeth were really worn down, and so he's very cautious. Not cocky. His bugle was not impressive. Just a little piper of a bugle that you're like, it's probably like a 5-point or something. But I hate to, it's not personalities, it's elk analities, because they're not people, right? But they all, how they act and how they carry themselves and how cautious they are and how vocal they are, how flamboyant they are, it all varies. And of course we love the ones that are cocky because they're easy to kill. But the old ones, the old sneaky ones, are the ones that carry on the genetics for future generations. These are the ones that if 90% of the herd died, these are the ones that are going to still be alive. Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating to me what these elk and the dynamics of the rut based on different geographical locations and herds and management strategies. And so, yeah, it's very interesting.
It is. It's so interesting. Well, and if you catch that bull on a different day in peak rut where there's a bunch of cows in estrus, maybe he does lose his mind a little bit. He's just more cautious when he knows they're coming into it too.
Yep.
But I do agree with your theory of the elk analogies. Like I like that, because you're right. To be able to survive multiple seasons, survive multiple bow seasons, multiple rifle seasons, you get that way. You get to be a little bit more crafty, a little bit more cautious, and you're reserved until it's time to go. And I remember one of the biggest bulls I ever chased. Like I hate to spit off numbers, but he was the biggest, most giant 6-point, I'd ever seen to date, that I'd ever seen picked up sheds of, seen on the winter range. I mean, the thing was a giant. And I remember, he was rutting, and in the dark I could hear him bugling or whatever down below in these parks, and he was coming up at me, and he was coming up, and he had some cows, and he was chasing them, and there was another bull kind of in the mix with some other cows, so 2 different bulls, 2 different groups of cows, and they were coming up the hill. And they kind of joined up, and now it's like the lights are on, daylight's on, absolute giant bull. And that bull did his rutting at night, and then he totally left all those cows. He didn't want to fight that other bull. He stopped bugling, and he went off on his own all by himself and just started going deep into cover, leaving all those cows, stopping bugling. And he was one of the biggest bulls I had ever chased, and it was peak rut dates. He was just crafty how he was doing it. He was coming down at night to breed those cows because they were right. And then daybreak, he started to go up, and he was working his cows up, and then pretty soon he knows daylight's on, pressure's on, I don't like this scenario anymore, being with these cows. And he left, and he gave them all to that 320 bull that came up with the other cows, gave all his cows away, didn't want to defend them, didn't want to fight for him, didn't want to bugle with that other bull. He just snuck off onto his own and got into some cover, and then he was gone, and I never saw that bull again. So, I think you're right that they, the older they get, just the more leery they are of calls too, and so you've had a lot of your success calling big bulls in early in the rut, almost what you would call pre-rut, when they're starting to search for these cows, and it's just starting to be prime time, it's just starting to be time where they're going to be able to find cows in estrus. And so you're able to call these bulls in, but you try to call in that bull middle of September, or when he's got a bunch of cows or things, and not all bulls leave the cows, but a lot of them do breed at night and leave. But even you find a big bull that's got a bunch of cows and he's down there with other bulls, it's good luck calling that bull in. He's preoccupied with the cows. He's been around the block, and a lot of times you call it a bull like that, and he picks off that it isn't normal, or that it isn't the right sound, and he'll even gather up his cows and go away from you, just hearing one bugle, hearing one cow. And whether he thinks you're another elk in competition, or whether he can pick up that, hey, that isn't right, that's another hunter, I'm out of here. Whatever the case is, and I've been in the middle of the wilderness with no hunting pressure and blow on a few calls that'll trick every satellite bull in the book and call every one of them in, make a few calls, and he just gathers up his cows and goes. He doesn't want any part of it. So they do get crafty, and if you're targeting herd bulls, these giant, larger age class herd bulls, the ones that we're really looking for, man, you really got to sharpen your skills, because these bulls, they don't make a lot of mistakes. Now, we all know somebody that's called in a big bull that made a few cow calls and came in, and I think what that is a lot of times is it's just catching that bull on the right day. You come over the ridge, sometimes you just catch a big bull, and he's so fired up, he's breeding cows, he's fending off satellites, he can't help himself, and you get to the right position and you call that bull in. But that bull may only be right to call in a couple days out of the whole month of September. So you gotta hit that day just perfect, unless, and really that's the reason why I started spot and stalking and really committing to hunting elk that way, is because I started to target these larger age class bulls. And what I found, a lot of the bulls that I was calling in were satellites, almost all of them, and I call those satellites in, but those aren't the bulls I'm interested in killing. And that herd bull, I'd just work him and work him and work him, and I'd chase him out of the country. He wouldn't come in. Or when I would call in a bull, it just seems like he'd come in on such pins and needles looking for where that sound was made, like that bull you're talking about. Like they come in on such high alert that you can hardly get your bow drawn back. You can hardly blink because they see and catch that movement and they're gone. They're facing you. They come through trees. They're really leery. You know, maybe if you got a caller behind you or something, but they just don't make many mistakes even during the rut, those big, large herd bulls. And so that's why I started spot and stalking them more, because I could really focus on those bulls. And then I could keep the element of surprise. Like they didn't know I was hunting them, so I can hunt them for multiple days without chasing them out of the area. And I just found that it was like elk being elk then. Like they may fend off satellites or be bugling or trying to rut cows, but I wasn't chasing them off, and I wasn't like following the herd, like trying to catch up, just bugling back and forth, not really doing any good, never calling in that bull. All of a sudden, I could really focus on that herd bull and look for a chink in his armor, look for him to make a mistake and go over a ridge, or look to a type of country that he was susceptible. And when I'm spot and stalking elk, you know, I don't just run at every big bull I see. Like I kind of gotta, you know, when we talked about this today on the podcast, is like kind of like earlier podcast that we recorded, is like take what they give you. Like they go over a ridge and all of a sudden they're secluded, he's bugling. Now I've got the cover where no, I can't see any elk, no elk are looking at me, and I can work to that ridge line and then look over the top and possibly catch him there, cut off where he's headed, or like I could just look for these little places where he was susceptible that I could work in and try to kill him. But that's a huge reason why I started spot and stalking, especially general units, high pressure elk. Those elk are even tougher to call in. Like you talk about breaks bulls, like I mean it's a well-known fact in Montana. Like the breaks are a great place to hunt elk and hunt big ones. They don't call in very often out there, like almost never. Like none of the guys are using calling tactics. Some guys will use some cow calls and things, but it's a well-known fact that those high-pressure elk, they get chased 20 times in a season. They just don't respond to those calls. They still rut, they still bugle, but they just don't come in too often. At least that's my experience.
No, I think it's exactly right. And a lot of these bulls, I think there's two factors. The pressure, as pressure goes on, they become less callable, because they've been educated. And so it's always more difficult at the end of September to call them. And I think as season wears on, it's harder and harder. And I don't care where you're at, and I don't care how much pressure there is. I think there's two factors, hunting pressure being number one. Number two is testosterone level drops. As they breed, and multiple times over and over, their testosterone is slowly going down. And as you get down to the end of the month, end of September, you have these old mature bulls, what we're hunting for, these mature ones, they've reached lows by this time, by October. And so, yeah, you can find some of these big bulls in October by themselves, and it's a good time to kill them because they're by themselves. But to call them in, and I've seen this several times too, because I've tested it, and even on private places, even places that don't have a lot of pressure, but these bulls are worn down. They have rutted hard. They're exhausted. They have no testosterone left. Probably not any desire to breed at this point either. You call at them or bugle at them, they don't even act like they heard anything. They don't care. And I think a lot of that has to do too with just numbers. Like some of these places I've guided and have hunted, is there's so many elk, there's so much bugling going on that it's nothing to them. Like, why would they come to a bugle when there's 86 other bulls bugling? So like calling is pretty much effectiveless. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. And you'll see that on my Montana episode with this big bull. It was crazy. Once again, probably the most insane elk hunting I've ever witnessed. And there's a lot of bulls, and there was a lot of herd bulls and a lot of older bulls. But this bull, he had his 12 cows, and what he was worried about is keeping his cows away from everybody else. And that tends to be what happens on public land too, or most places, is that if a bull bugles and is coming in on them, he's taking his cows and leaving. He's pushing them away because he doesn't want the competition, because competition is so high, or he's just that wary from being spooked so much. And so this bull, I say it in the camera because he's pretty aggressive, and this cow it was crazy, a crazy experience, because there's this other big herd bull with like 60, 70 cows, and they were bugling on this ridge, and I was staring at them trying to figure out how I'm going to wiggle in and kill this monster. And a bugle erupts behind me, and over the ridge, here comes 12 cows and the bull that I killed. And these cows are like keying in on this big cow herd, and they want to be over there. And so they're trying to leave, like they're trying to get down to the big herd, and he's doing everything he can to keep them away, like to not let them leave. Just what you would expect a little bit. But it's actually opposite. He's frantically trying to keep his cows away from another bull. And one of the cows, it was weird because we didn't capture it all on footage because it happened so quick. But the one cow like got away from him, and he was like chasing him like you would see like a crazed, rutted up buck antelope. You know, they run 1,000,000 miles an hour chasing a doe. It was like that, of this 375 bull chasing this cow because she wanted nothing to do with him or that herd. And she ran all the way down past us at like 70 yards, almost got a shot at the bull. But he still had his 11 cows up on this little bench in the wide open that were kind of locked down feeding. So he ran all the way back up to his cows. So I say to the camera, I'm like, I think we're going to try. We have this nice lip here, geographical feature, that I'm going to get in below him and just bugle at him and see what happens. And he's very territorial, but it's actually the opposite. It's not that he's territorial. He's just trying to keep his cows from leaving. So he doesn't want anything to do with somebody else. So I slip in there and call at him, and he's bugling too. He's a bull calling cows bugle. He's wanting to round the cows up, and I bugle at him and nothing. And then he bugles again. I bugle back, nothing. His bugle's not getting closer. And he's about 100 yards away at this point, but he's just over this crest. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, my hunch was right. He's not going to come confront me. He's not going to come chase me off. He's a runner. But his cows were holding tight. And so I aborted on all calling at that second because, and this is all like, you know, you better make decisions quick, and you better make the right decisions really quick, because your opportunity, your window is going to be gone very quick too. And so after that third bugle, I believe, I heard him moving away. So I basically threw the call, and then we took off down the hill. And I mean, we're going fast. And I mean, this is a bull with a huge back end coming up over the crest. And so that's what I saw was his back end. And I got within 80 standing up. And so I told my camera guys, like, get down, we got to cut the distance. And so we're like frantically crawling through the sagebrush and shaving off another 15 yards because it's spot and stock 1,000% right now, and peaked up at 65 and poked him. But that's how quick it can happen, because like these moments of elk making these decisions on what they're going to do, and you being able to read that, and then you as a hunter being dynamic have to make these decisions too and say, okay, yeah, this is a spot and stalk technique. This bull is not going to come confront me, and abandoning it. And that can be hard, because you go into a scenario and just be like, okay, I'm going to stalk this bull. Or you go into a scenario and be like, I'm just going to call him in, and that's all I have. But being dynamic can be very hard. But just because the sound of his bugle or how big this bull is doesn't mean that he's going to come into a call at all. I don't care how tough he sounds. And so it's very interesting on how these elk act, and on these places with a lot of competition. It's like they want to stay away from each other more often than they want to, you know, come confront you and fight you. No bull elk wants to fight. That's last resort. And that's why I think you can take advantage of calling early season. Testosterone, I'll rehash this, testosterone's at peak levels. These elk haven't been hunted as much at this point by September 10th. And so they haven't been spooked as much. Still early in the season. I think they're more callable. Every day that goes on, these bigger, older, mature bulls, these old ones that we target, becomes harder and harder to call them as every day goes by.
Yeah, man, that's such like good instincts and reacting to the situation. Like, man, that's just good elk hunting.
But it's so interesting because, you know, you're looking, you're watching these, and you're like, okay, what's going through this bull's head, and how is he acting? And a lot of times they'll tell you what they're thinking by their movements, and by how much or how little protective they are to their harem. Some bulls aren't as much. These big old bulls don't want to fight, but they come in and breed, and when it's time and they're ready to breed, they do what they want. They come in and breed, and then, like, that's amazing to me. It's very interesting that story that you have this big old bull, and then daylight hits, and then he moved off on his own. Those are the bulls that die of old age, I'm telling you. It's just crazy.
It's just I like what you said, like your window of time. Like elk, their advantage, like you've hunted red deer a bunch, and red deer are really similar to elk, but they don't roll the country like elk do. Elk's biggest advantage in the mountains is their ability to move through country. And so your windows of time to kill that bull, whether you're spot and stalking, whether you're calling, whatever it is, those windows are very small and very short. Like trying to catch them in the right place at the right time when you can move in on them. And I used to do really good with cow sounds and like an estrus cow call. That was my go-to. And I saw, who was it? We're not sponsored by any call companies here on the podcast, but it was, I saw a new cow call. But I used to use like a Primos Hyperlip was the one I used. And a real whiny cow call sometimes would fire up these bulls. Just the, just kind of drawn out and real whiny. And part of what calling is, part of what elk hunting is exactly what you stated, Dan, of being able to read that bull, to be able to read what he's doing, what he's thinking by the way he answers calls, how fired up he is, the direction of the bugle, which way is he moving, and you kind of like, you're not inside their head, but that's what a lot of elk hunting is trying to read what that bull is thinking and what he's doing, his personality type, and trying to find a weakness in that. Yep. And so, like, cow calls can be good towards that middle of the season where they don't want to fight. Like you say, that's, like, I didn't do very good picking fights with bulls. I did better, like, sweet-talking them with cow calls. And I do better, I always said, like, my calls, it's not the noises I'm making so much as where I'm making them from. Like, chasing elk, like, from behind them and then calling, getting a reaction, calling, getting a reaction. You just chase these elk all morning long until they stop calling. But instead, if you can get a bead of where these elk are headed, stop calling and loop around or cut the distance and get inside 100 yards, then you got a chance. You make a couple calls and he might just turn around and come see what you're up to, but it's really like getting inside that bubble. And so even if you're a caller, you have to be really good at spot and stalking and moving through the forest, moving through the woods, moving through the elk woods with intention and knowing when you need to speed up. And sometimes I'm running or jogging to try to keep up with elk or to catch up or to get in front of them. And then I know when to slow down. When I'm going to come up over a ridge and I might see an elk, I really slow down. Or from his bugle, knowing the distance he is, I know he's a few hundred yards. I need to cut the distance here. And then I get a couple hundred yards. And it's like, okay, I might see him now. I need to slow down and I need to start glassing the timber in front of me. I need to see those elk before they see me. Like if you lose the element of surprise and those elk see you moving, the gig's up. Like you're not going to kill that bull. And so like knowing the right speed to go, knowing when to slow down, when to move slow, and then really getting yourself in tight if you do prefer to call them before you call out and try to call that bull in. Or I always did good if I could get to where they're headed. Like, oh, they're coming for this saddle. If I can make it to that saddle, I'd make it to that saddle, a couple cow calls, and here he is coming over the ridge at me. Like, I just got to where he wanted to go, and then it was easy for him to check me out. Or if they're going to, like, bedding timber, and you're up in that bedding timber with a good wind, all of a sudden you're where he wants to bed and wants to filter around. And I've even called, like, you were talking about the big bull you called last year, and you were saying those cows wanted to run to the herd. I've actually called cows in and then have the bull follow. Like, I didn't even call the bull in. I made some cow sounds, and all of a sudden those cows want to be with me, and I have all the cows running at me, and the bull's chasing them just to try to get his cows back or to come in. And so there's a bunch of different tactics, but to be a really good elk hunter is not just calling, chasing a bull. It's not just trying to get the right bugle where he reacts. It's really reading that elk, reading his attitude, reading his mannerisms. It's what are those elk up to? Where are they headed? Like just reading those situations and scenarios and really using your elk instincts to put yourself in the right spots, whether it's to call them in or to cut them off and be able to spot and stalk them in the right position. But it's a lot about reading elk and what they're thinking and what they're doing, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you can start, I mean, you're understanding the species. When you understand a species and you understand what they're doing, it's all for a reason. Like elk hunting and killing elk becomes easier if you just understand the animal first. That's huge. And, that hits home too of, growing up chasing bugles. And I swear if I were to just be quiet and follow the herd until they go to bed and then maybe deploy some calls and come up with a strategy, I probably wouldn't have had to chase elk so far, because as I'm calling and they're calling, I think they just keep moving farther and farther away, and they end up bedding way farther away than they would have if I just would have been quiet. Because it's a two-way street with these cows too, because you have a bull and then you have a harem of cows, whether it's 2 or 3 or 30, but those cows have to want to be with him too, because a cow just won't let any bull breed her. And I've seen that both ways. And so if you go in and you're calling at a bull and he just moves his cows and moves them away, those are cows that want to be with him, and they are okay with him being the breeder. And the times that you move in and call a bull in, or cow calls away from, or what I witnessed, these cows trying to leave him going to another bull, to another herd, those are cows obviously that don't want to be with him. And so using that to your advantage is huge. And so it's a two-way street, right? I was going to say like any relationship, but like the cows will have to want to be with him.
Yeah, totally.
And so one year, for example, this herd came through. I was in Montana. It was October, it was later season, and this herd they spooked by me, and he was like hunting whitetail. I shot him in the shoulder. He ducked the string, and I hit him kind of like in the neck meat area of the shoulder. It happened very quick, and none of the elk knew what happened. And so it was kind of chaos, and they all kind of split up. And so I just hung there, and like 30 minutes later, this cow was like a lost cow call. And so I calf called to her, because it was late season bugling. These bulls were not callable. I was calling at them days prior. So I just lost calf call, and she came running to me. And of course I was quiet, but this little raghorn was following her, and he was lip curling and like tried to mount her once, and she would not let him do it. Wouldn't let him do it. And she might've been in estrus at the time, but she was not letting him breed. I ended up just being quiet and watching them as they went in circles and back and forth, and he was trying to breed her, and then finally they came up to like 10 yards, and I just watched them, and it was just like a little tiny bull like this. And then I ended up spooking them, and they took off. But just hitting home that point is like, if a cow doesn't want to be around that bull or have a bull breed them, that's where I think like some of these particular cow calls can be very effective, by calling in these cow elk and bulls following them silently. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it sure is. You have to really rely upon your instincts and let them guide you and make moves. And I think it's so important when you're hunting elk to keep the element of surprise. And that doesn't mean that you can't call at them or call them in or whatever, but you just, it seems like a lot of times you get into elk country and you don't know elk are there, and you bump into them and you blow the herd and you never have a chance at them. Or, you're hunting and you're finally into elk and they're bugling around, and you're trying to make moves on this bull that you hear, that you know where he's at, and you're moving through a park, and all of a sudden you get caught by a bull. and maybe it's a satellite bull, or maybe you get caught by some other cows you didn't know were there, and all of a sudden it blows up. But it seems like the longer you can play the game without elk seeing you, without elk smelling you, just the more chance you have to kill them. And that goes for spot and stalking, that goes for calling, that goes for all of it. So when you're moving around the elk woods, just make sure that you're like aware of your surroundings. You're looking in your peripheral left and right. You kind of know when to slow down and when to move. And then I've seen it where guys are just moving through a park instead of moving through the edge of the timber. And all of a sudden those elk see them moving on the edge of the park, and they're trying to cover country. And elk, it's just a lot of instincts and reaction. It's one of the reasons why I love hunting elk, and I think you do too, is elk are meant to be run and gun. Like, they move country and roll country, and you got to be able to move with them. And very rarely is an elk like a mule deer stalk where it's this calculated, methodical play, and you have them bedded down and you're sneaking into that position and you take 10 minutes to move 10 yards. I mean, sometimes for sure, but it just doesn't seem that way. It seems like elk, you see them, and then you go over to where they're at, you kind of get the wind right, and then once you get over to where they're at, then you have to adapt to that situation. Like, the elk aren't where you left them. Now all of a sudden they're in the timber and you see them there and you go, okay, what moves do I have now that I can make? Okay, I'm going to move to where they're at. Then you get to that spot and then they've moved again, and now you're reacting to that situation. And so it's really fast paced and like sweat down your brow, and you're just making these moves just on your instincts, and just 100 decisions you have to make, like to kill a bull. But you're just reacting to the situation and the scenario that you're given, and then you get to that point, and then you react again, and that point, and you react again, and that point. Okay, they're starting to bed. Maybe I can come around the backside and I can make this happen, or maybe I'll get in close and make a couple cow calls. Like, that is elk hunting, and it's one of the reasons we love it so much, is that they're meant to be hunted aggressively. Like, you have to make moves. Like, I've sat back and tried to be really patient with a bull, waiting for him to get in the perfect spot. And it's like it never happens, or he moves off, or it just doesn't come together. Like, to kill an elk, you have to see a big bull and go, okay, let's play the game. Like, and you got to keep the wind right. You don't want to be reckless. You don't want to blow him up. You want to keep the element of surprise, but you almost have to just go over there and get into him and see what you can make happen with the situation that you're dealt. And that is elk hunting to me, and part of the reason why I love it.
Absolutely. You're being dynamic. You have to be dynamic. If you're not a dynamic person, or you can't, think on your feet, you're going to struggle. It's going to be tough. And I really like what you said about the element of surprise, because there's so much to that. And you bring it up a lot when we're talking elk or any bow hunting, because it is so important. But, the element of surprise, where you said how you're moving through the country, that's the element of surprise. It's how you're calling. You can call and strategically make noise, but are you keeping your element of surprise? So what that means is, are you calling in the right scenarios? Are you calling in the right geographical positions? Can an elk see where that call is coming from? If he can see it, it's over. And so that's a part of keeping the element of surprise. You can still call an elk in and keep that element of surprise if you're doing so in the right topographical features, with the right wind at the right timing. And so it's probably the most important thing about bow hunting, the element of surprise, right? That's what matters. And so think about that. Everybody should actually think about that and apply that to their methods, to their tactics. We all hunt a little bit different, and so I can sit here and critique myself too, and be like, what do I need to do in these situations to be better at keeping the element of surprise? Where you put your tent, where are you camping? Like, all these different things is so important. So yeah, it's great stuff. And elk are, like you said, it's running and gunning a lot of times. And you can obviously find success sitting water, guys hunt out of tree stands. Sure, you can find success, absolutely. But yeah, it's more of, what type of experience are you looking for? Elk hunting is exciting. Elk hunting is taxing mentally and physically. When you're elk hunting and you're working hard like that, it makes you feel alive. You know that, like, this is what I was designed to be out here for. This is what our ancestors were doing back thousands of years ago. And so it's a primal thing too, of just being out there, man versus beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, as I think about it too, knowing when to back off of an elk is really difficult. So we talk, I just got done saying how I hunt them aggressively. I go get into them. I see what I can make happen. I'm also pretty good at realizing it's not going to come together, or the times to back off a bull and then get back on them in the evening, or back off a bull and go for them in the morning. Don't risk it all right here. It's not the right scenario. That's a really learned skill, and it's incorporating patience into your aggressive hunting. And so I'm pretty good at it because I kill a lot of bulls in the evening. I love killing them in the evening. I've got downhill thermals that are pretty consistent. They're coming out into the openings where I can see them and glass them instead of going into the timber. And so that's a high opportunity play for me. So I may go get into elk and I'm chasing them in the morning. And the times I'm going to back off are when that bull stops calling. That bull goes silent, all of a sudden I can't tell where he's at in the timber. He's not calling anymore. Now I'm just wandering around the timber, and I'm going to go bump those elk, and then I'm going to go have to find new elk and start over at square one. So when he stops calling, or it's getting later in the morning and the thermals start switching around and the winds just aren't right, it's I'm not going to kill this bull. He's just going to catch my wind. I got to back out. I'll come play on him again tonight, and I know where this bull is at. I have one located, And so you have to be able to back out or hold back. Or I've had it late morning, maybe it was last season, maybe the season before, but I was chasing a good bull, and he was still bugling, but he just got in the thick stuff where it was so noisy to go in after him. And I'm he's going to bed in there, but I just don't really have a play where he's at. And to sit there 150 yards away from a bull that's bugling his head off is really difficult. But I know in the evening he's going to come out into the parks where I can see him, and I got a better chance to kill him. And so you kind of have to factor that in elk hunting too. And I think it just comes from making so many damn mistakes over the years of just chasing elk until I blow them up. It's I've chased so many elk and so many bulls that are bugling, and I followed them into stuff, and they're still calling, and I blow them up, and then, this bull of my dreams is gone, and I have to start over, and it crushes you, you're God, why am I such an idiot? I'm so aggressive, and so after learning some of these valuable lessons, it's I chase them. And again, I take what the elk give me, and when they stop giving me a chance to kill them, or they stop giving me a bugle to locate them, or I can't see them anymore, or the situation starts turning to this low percentage, ooh, I don't feel good about this, winds shifting around, I'm just going to back out, and then I'm going to keep an eye on where that bull's at for the day. And the bull I killed last year, my best bull to date, I trailed that bull in the morning trying to catch up to him, trying to see him, trying to make a play, and he went into the timber. I still knew where he was at. He was in a patch of timber, but he was in thick cedars, and I didn't go in after him. I sat there, and then middle of the day, I saw him come out on the edge, and I thought he was by himself. He was actually with one cow. I made a play in to try to kill him, got in there to 30 yards, and I could see him bedded in his rack there, and he stood up and went through one opening. I know I've told this story on the podcast, and then he got down in that thick stuff. And I'm oh, I don't feel good about this. I'm not going to chase him in there. I'm going to blow this scenario up on this giant 7-7. I'm going to back out and go back to the vantage point. That's what I did. And then in the evening, he came out into the parks where he gave me a perfect play on him, perfect move, and able to arrow that bull and kill him. But that was learned through 20 years of making a million mistakes on those things. But I do think you have to incorporate your patience in with your aggressive nature. And there's been times when I'm chasing elk where a cow picks up some movement, stares in my direction, and I've had to stay motionless for 30 minutes until she forgets about me and moves off. Sometimes you just have to stay still, and the bull's bugling, and it's chaos, and you want to make moves, but all of a sudden you're in a position where you can't move anymore. You're caught in the open, or the elk's in the open, or there's just it doesn't lend itself to killing that bull, and you're going to blow him up, and that's when you have to know to sit back and let it develop a little bit, let things move off, or maybe wait till evening. But that's a really tough thing to learn as a bow hunter, especially one that likes to hunt them aggressively.
No, absolutely. That's the thing, especially if you're an aggressive style of hunter, that makes that more difficult. But from what you were saying, in which it's so true, that the situation tells you what you need to do. But are you going to listen?
That's so true.
Right? That's what it comes down to. Is like,
so true.
Because if you're like, no, I can do it, or I'm gonna, crawl in there or whatever, usually it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But if you set back for a second and listen to the situation, and maybe push that tunnel vision to the side and take everything in, all of a sudden the situation is telling you what to do, and you're just along for the ride. And before you know it, because you understand elk behavior, you understand that evening time. Thing is, in your mind, in my mind, in everybody's mind that lives in this modern age, we have things to do. We want instant gratification. We're going, we're doing, we're getting things accomplished in the real world. But out there, that bull doesn't have anything to do but lay there all day, pipe off a few bugles. So you shouldn't have anything to do all day. You should lay there and just let him tell you when it's go time again. And that's what's very difficult. And we've talked about that a lot over the years of patience. Patience kills the bull, patience kills the buck. It's no different. Is sitting back, letting the elk tell you what he's doing, what he's going to do, reading the signs, reading the topography, the cover that you have, and that bull, it was just like clockwork. That bull is probably, late in the afternoon, he's going to come out for a little graze and get on the edge of that cover and just, feed in that little shadowy pocket, and you're waiting there for him. And so those are the little windows, like what you've just illustrated before, that we as bow hunters have to anticipate and then take advantage of when those little windows are given to us.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great description. Yeah, read the scenario, read the situation. Yeah, react to it. That's exactly it. Yeah, it's not easy to kill those bulls, man, especially the herd dynamics with all the cows and all the eyeballs. It's really easy to make a mistake. It's really easy to get caught by them, and done it 1,000 times. But you're right, once you can start to read those situations and scenarios and make calculated plays when it's time, or when they're susceptible, or when you can get in, that's the difference. That's like being a really good elk hunter, man. That's it.
And I think at the end of the day, I can feel, a high level of satisfaction if you can get into that zone. So you're like in the zone, probably within 100 yards or maybe 100 yards, and you've played all your cards right, but they're in a less than ideal spot. Maybe they quit bugling. Maybe they're in the thick cover. And so now really the move is up to them. And so what do elk do? They lay there for a little while, and then I'm picturing this, as I'm sitting there, these bulls get up and they go over and they check this cow that's laying here, and then he goes over here to the other side of the herd, and then somewhere in there you're just playing the odds that he's going to make a mistake. So if you have a couple windows, maybe you can see one of his cows. A lot of times I'll do that if I'm stalking in. If I can see one of his cows, or if I'm in bow range of one of his cows, dude, you're in a freaking ideal spot. Mm-hmm. Don't do anything else. Mm-hmm. If you have that wind, I don't care. I'll sit there 8 hours, because I know I'm inside of one of his cows. And if you understand what elk are doing during the peak of the rut, he's going around checking his cows. Guess what? He's going to come over and check her, and guess what? You're ready for him.
Yep. So, I killed a bull a couple of years ago like that. Just got inside a couple cows, and then here he comes to come check them half an hour later. Just put yourself in those situations. Yep.
And the more times that you can be in those situations, mm-hmm. you're going to find success like every year.
Yeah.
Probably. If you can keep the wind. A lot of times that's hard in the mountains. The wind can be swirly. But if you have a great wind and you can just constantly put yourself in those situations where you're kind of in the zone, and you might be just like a little bit out of range of him, or you can't quite see him, but you see one of his cows and then just sit and wait. Man, it's a good tactic.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the best tactics, yeah. And really, you don't have much of a move to make. Once you're inside a bow range of those cows, you can't really keep moving in. You can't try to get a shot at him. Like, your only move is to stay put. And it doesn't always happen. Hunting elk isn't a perfect world. Like you say, the wind can switch. You can blow them out of there. Like, things can blow up, and they will. But just like you stated, the more times you can put yourself in that situation, eventually he makes a mistake and you end up killing a good bull.
Yep.
So you just keep putting yourself in that situation, in that scenario, and then eventually he'll make a mistake and come by in bow range. But yeah, that's elk hunting. It's really difficult, but man, is it fun. And I think it really tugs at our heartstrings because of this need to really relying upon your instincts, the moves you make, when to hold still, when to make a move. Like it is primal when you're making moves on elk. They're one of the most thrilling animals to hunt because of that reason. And also, you can read what that bull's up to. Like I love when you can see those antlers and see him, whether he's turned around or he's moving cows, or you can kind of keep tabs on those antlers and be able to move without those elk seeing you. So, yeah, man, it's really fun. 5 elk hunts between us this year. It's going to be some bulls catch some arrows, but there's going to be a bunch of fun had, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We'll be working hard but having fun, and ultimately that's what matters. If you're not having fun at it, then what's the point?
Yeah, they are one of the funnest animals to chase. But yeah, well, thanks, man. That was a fun podcast all about elk. Just want to thank our sponsors real quick. So I want to thank Matthews Bows. Man, I got that new lift deck shooting good. I got so much confidence in that bow. Really forgiving bow. It has held the exact tune, to the 32nd of measurements, or even the 64th. It just holds its tune all the way through season. I'm really impressed by it. The thing's absolutely shooting. Yours is shooting good too, I imagine?
Yeah, they're phenomenal. And when, I'm going through an arrow change this in the next couple weeks, and so there's just zero stress because I know that I get my arrows fletched up, and I'll just start with a bare shaft probably and work with the limb shift technology and fine tune it and get my left and right, perfect, and my bare shafts grouping, and it just speeds up the whole tuning process. And there's just something about it, like we talked before, some of these spring hunts, when your bow is perfection and you're shooting a bare shaft perfectly downrange and grouping them. So the level of confidence that you have in your setup, it just becomes an all-time high. And that's where I'm at. And so that's why, an arrow change in the next couple weeks is no big deal because those bows are so easy to tune.
Yep, same. Yeah, and thanks to Cutter Stabilizers, Earl Stroll, just building the best stabilizers on the market. Carbon fiber, lightweight. You can add a weight by 1 ounce at a time. Sidebar mount, sidebars. He's even come out with a new quiver. He's just always thinking, but just great products, great testing, and then the stabilizers, they really help. And everybody's got a personal preference on length and weight and what they like. But the beautiful thing is he's got all different sizes, all different weights.
Yeah, it's so awesome to be able to work with small companies. And I think small companies give their customers the best product and, of course, the best customer service. And that's ultimately what business is customer service, right?
Yep.
And so, that's why I like, Cutter Stabilizers and Earl. Great company and great product. And what are you shooting this year for a length?
I shoot a 15 out front, 12 out back. I'm shooting about, I think I'm 6 ounces out front and 10 ounces in the back. So a little bit heavier setup, but man, that thing just holds so good.
Yeah, I bet it's rock solid. I think I'm shooting the 10-inch out front. I don't mess with the sidebar ever. I have, I think, 6 ounces out front. Maybe it's 4 ounces. But yeah, just keeps it stable a little bit. I like the shorter bows, throw in the backpack. That's what I like about it too. But great products.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Dan.